As you could see from the games we looked at in our last session, everything we discussed so far came into play, except for the presence of a passed pawn. There was attacking and guarding moves, threats, mate threats, defending against mate, a lead in development, a vulnerable king position, and material imbalance. In this lab, we will look at two more games where the lead in development is not as prominent as in those Morphy games. The same elements appear on the board, the way to exploit them, and the consequences that follow, however, are no different. Only this time these games are relatively more recent games from grandmasters tournament play. Welcome, chess masters. In case you did not notice, on those Morphy games we looked at in the last session, the elements of evaluation were lead in development plus threats plus vulnerable enemy king position versus material advantage. In the opera game, it was a piece sacrifice for 2 pawns and a strong attack on the non-castle king. In the Evans Gambit game, it was material sacrifice, in this case a pawn, for lead in development, a strong center, and a vulnerable enemy king position. In the third game, White did not even have material compensation for his queen and king troubles. I think a good moment to do an evaluation was after White captured queen takes c5. Material is equal and both sides have to complete their development. What was a better way to proceed for White after queen takes c5? Looking to bring its queen back to a better place where it can no longer be harassed by black's pieces anymore. Concretely, play queen c4 check and queen e2, and then proceed with king to safety. It is a very slight advantage for White from here, due to having a pawn in the center, and the potential to open up with moves pawn f4, pawn e5, where black's king is limping some for safety. Play is definitely easier for White than for black in this position. Let us now have a look at two more games. Developing with threats can also happen in closed openings. In closed openings, pieces and pawns don't come into contact as quickly as in open games. The first game, played between Donald Byrne against Bobby Fischer in October 17, 1956 in New York. In this game, we will look at two things. In topic, developing with threats, show what happens when you neglect developing. Again, king stuck in the center and vulnerable. What was a better way to proceed to avoid that? Off topic, look at how tactical elements start appearing on the board, which can happen after either the opponent made a mistake or because a superior position is achieved by force, bit by bit, to the point where the superiority can be exploited. This game was nicknamed the Game of the Century by Hans Kemok in Chess Review. Kemok wrote, quote, "The following game, a stunning masterpiece of combination play, performed by a boy of 13-year-old against a formidable opponent, matches the finest on record in the history of chess prodigies. Donald Byrne was one of the leading American grandmasters at the time of this game. He had won the 1953 US Open Championship. Robert James Bobby Fischer was a chess grandmaster and one of the greatest players in chess history. He won the world title in 1972 in a match against Boris Spassky. After that, he stopped playing and gave up defending the title. So, in 1975, the winner of the candidates' matches, Anatoly Karpov, was declared the champion. So, White opened with knight f3, developing move, knight f6, developing move, c4, pawn in the center, g6, helps developing, knight c3, developing move, bishop g7. developing move. d4, pawn in the center, castles, king to safety, bishop f4, developing move, d5, pawn in the center, queen b3, queen out early, although in this game, this move, a specific move, is not a big issue. D takes c4, trading pawns because the pawn on d5 was being attacked 3 times by the queen, by the knight, and by this pawn on c4, and only defended twice. So black trades the pawn, white recaptures, now c6. Not a developing move, but the pawn on c7 was being attacked twice by the bishop and by the queen. e4, another pawn in the center, knight b to d7, developing move, intending to play knight b6 to harass the white queen when possible. Rook d1, a developing move. What happens if white plays e5, a non-developing move, instead of rook d1? e5, black plays knight d5, white captures, black recaptures, and at this point, if white gets greedy and takes the extra pawn, black would get a better game by playing knight takes e5, attacking the white queen and also threatening capturing the knight on f3 check with a better game. So the best choice for white is, instead of getting greedy, is coming back to b3, to a safe square. Going back to what was played in the game, rook d1, knight b6, harassing or attacking the queen, plus controlling the important key square d5, queen c5. An inaccuracy. The better move was going back to b3. Bishop g4, a developing move with a threat. What is the threat? Similar to Morphy's opera game, when he played bishop g5, the threat is to capture the knight and create a pawn structure weakness for the opponent, double pawns. Also, in this game, the knight on f3 is one of the supporters of the central pawn on d4, controls the center, so eliminating it makes sense. If black intends to target white's central pawns, white continued bishop g5, the first non-developing move of the game, and already a mistake, a big one. Bishop e2, a developing move that addresses the threat, was better, simple. Bishop g5 allows black to fork the queen and the bishop by placing a knight on e4. Bobby Fischer realizes that he could target the e4 pawn and fork the queen and bishop. So in this position, he played knight to a4, which happens to be another fork, attacking the queen and attacking the defender of the e4 pawn, with the idea that if white captures the black knight, black would capture on e4, attacking the queen and the bishop. The queen can no longer stay on the 5th rank defending the bishop, and after the queen is moved to a safe square, black would remove the defender of the white bishop and black would recapture back that bishop, reestablishing material equality and ending up the sequence with a pawn up. And if white does not capture the black knight, then black would take this knight, removing the defender of the e4 pawn anyway. So black would again be able to capture on e4, forking the queen and the bishop. So white played queen a3. Let me go back and dig in a bit to show what happens if white captures the knight and does not play it safe. If white captures the knight, black can play or would play knight takes pawn on e4, forking the queen and the bishop, And if white does not play it safe and plays bishop takes e7, black plays queen c7, and now white has a hard time keeping the guard of the bishop, plus placing the queen on a safe square. There is multiple options for white here: moving the queen away, capturing the rook, or moving the queen away to c2. Let's have a look at what happens if white takes the rook. Black plays queen, knight takes queen, bishop takes knight, and in this position black is better. Just out of curiosity, the engine gives a minus 3.5 advantage for white. Look at how the white king remains on an open file, vulnerable to attacks. There is also the possibility of creating a weakness on capturing on f3. So that is one possibility for white. The other one would be moving the queen to c2. In this case, black plays queen takes bishop, bishop e2 to block a possible discovered check, bishop takes f3, pawn takes f3 to avoid moving away the bishop and leave the file open, and then knight g5. In this position, it is also a better position for black. Out of curiosity, the engine says in this position black has an advantage of minus 3.2. Material is equal, but notice what black is fully developed. White has many pawn weaknesses: isolated pawn here, isolated double pawns, and isolated pawn here. Plus, more importantly, the current threat: knight takes on f3 check, bishop is pinned, and the white king is stuck in the center. The safest way to go for white here is to just move the king away to a safe square or safer square, because if it castles at this point, let's have a look at what happens. Castles, knight h3, king h1, king g2 drops the bishop on e2 to the fork, another fork. So king h1, queen h4, threatening another fork on f2, forking the king and the rook. Knight c3. If white tries to defend the f2 pawn with bishop d3, it drops the d4 pawn, which is worse. So knight c3, knight takes on f2, rook takes on f2, queen takes on f2. And at this point, black is winning. Black is material up, an exchange and a pawn up. Plus, white has to deal with the possibility of bishop h6, bishop f4, threatening checkmate. In this position, the engine gives an advantage to black of minus 5.0. So what happens after knight takes on a4? Knight takes on a4. Instead of bishop e7, black should play the safer move, queen a3. The game would continue. Black takes g5, white takes on g5, bishop takes on d1, king takes on d1, queen takes on d4 check, blocks the check. In this position, black still winning. So that shows what happens if white captures on a4 and lets black capture on e4. So, because of all that, going back to the game, white played queen a3. Let's have a look at how the game continued. Knight takes, pawn takes, and now black still takes on e4. Bishop takes on e7. We already saw that this was not the safe way to go. A better move was bishop e3, supporting the d4 point or pawn. Bishop e7, inaccuracy, queen b6. The engine points out that queen d5 was best. Queen b6, bishop c4, knight takes on c3. Another tactical shot, with the idea of opening the e file to attack the white king with the rooks. If white took on c3, black plays rook e, e8, king castles, rook takes, queen a3, bishop takes, queen takes the rook. If white takes the bishop, it just drops the d4 pawn. So white would take the rook, black takes the rook, white recaptures, and now the d4 pawn falls anyway. And at this point, black has a clear advantage. Black is 2 pawns up. White did not take the knight on c3. White played bishop c5, and the game continued. Rook f e8 check, king f1. Now the king is stuck in the center, vulnerable to attacks, and this rook is not playing. Bishop e6, excellent move. Sacrificing the queen with the idea of capturing the bishop on c4 with check, and then recapturing the bishop on b6, attacking the queen. The game continued. Bishop takes queen, which is a bad move. The better way to proceed was capturing the knight and entering a pen automatically by capturing this knight. Black would capture, queen takes c5. If white recaptures the queen, black recaptures the queen. The game continued. Bishop takes queen, bishop takes bishop check, king g1, knight check. Now white is forced to move the king to a potential discovered check by the knight. King f1, knight takes on d4, check, discovered check. To get out of check, white played king g1. These two squares are unsafe because the rook is attacking or controlling those squares. Check with the knight again, king f1. Now knight c3 check, only move, king g1, and now pawn takes queen, attacking the white queen. Queen goes to a safe square, attacking the bishop on c4. Notice how the knight on c3 is guarded by the bishop on g7. Black played rook f4, attacking the queen at the same time, guarding the bishop on c4. Queen takes pawn on b6, knight takes rook on d1. h3, creating a safe square for the king. Rook takes on e2, king goes to a safer square, h2. Knight takes on f2, attacking the white rook. Rook e1, offering it to trade rooks, and ease white's troubles a little bit. Rook takes rook, queen d8 check, bishop f8 blocks the check, and now recapturing the rook on e1. Bishop c4, targeting the g2 pawn. Knight f3, knight e4, queen b8, the pawn was unguarded, b5, h4, h5, knight e5. Notice how white has only the queen and the knight to create threats against the black king, which is not easy to do. Whereas the black pieces will soon coordinate against the white king with a very powerful attack. King g7, king g1, bishop c5 check, king f1, inaccuracy. Better move was king h2, keeping the king away from the central squares. Black would play in this case bishop d6, forking the queen and the knight, and black is winning. White played king f1. Now the white king is forced to go to e1. Let's see how Fischer finishes off this game. Bishop b4 check, king d1. The white king is restricted from coming to these squares because the rook is controlling those. Bishop b3 check, only move, king c1. Knight e2 check, king b1. Knight c3 check, king c1. And rook c2, checkmate. An unbelievable game by a 13-year-old Bobby Fischer. Again, this shows how problematic it is having a vulnerable king stuck in the center. It allowed Fischer to showcase a number of tactical resources like knight forks, pins, bishop forks, double checks, double attacks, discovered attacks to help black's strategy of exploiting a vulnerable king. Let us now move on to the second game. The second game, a game between Grandmaster Tigran Petrosyan against Grandmaster Ludek Pacman, played in September 10th, 1961 in Bled, former Yugoslavia. A closed opening game as well, shorter than Fischer's game, but nonetheless impressive on how it ends. This game shows how weak or bad moves by the opponent create a situation that can be exploited tactically. White opens with knight f3, black responds c5, g3 to develop the bishop to g2, developing move, bishop g2, g6, following a similar strategy to develop the bishop to g7, castles, bishop g7, d3, e6, e4, pawn in the center. Notice how at this point white has already a safe king and the king side pieces all developed and a pawn in the center. Black develops, developing move, rook e1, castles, e5, grabbing some space in the center. Let me point out, if black allows white to place a knight on d6, it would be very good for white. Black plays d6, challenging the e5 pawn. White trades pawn on d6, black recaptures, developing move. After the king side pieces have been fully developed, now white takes time to develop his queen side pieces. Queen c7, avoiding the tempo gaining move, knight e4. Knight b3, which gives way for the queen side dark square bishop. Knight d4, the first non-developing move by black. Let's see how this goes. Bishop f4, a developing move with a threat. Queen b6. Obviously, black has to spend time moving the queen to safety. Knight e5, threatening to harass the black queen with a knight. Black played knight takes b3, hoping that white would capture here and then get rid of this knight. But didn't see white can first insert the move knight c4, attacking the queen, and now white keeps its knight on c4. Game continued. Queen b5, pawn takes knight a5 to avoid an attack on the black queen with rook a5. Bishop d6, attacking the unguarded knight. Bishop f6. This is a mistake. A better move was defend the knight with rook e8. Now white has an opportunity to attack the guarding piece queen f3. Black plays king g7 to defend the bishop with the king, but this is a losing move. White continued, rook e4, black played rook d8. It attacks the bishop. The bishop is guarded. Here, white played the amazing sacrifice, queen sacrifice move. Queen takes bishop on f6, check. If black does not take the queen, it will lose another piece, the knight on e7. But if black recaptures, which is what happened in the game, now white plays bishop e5 check, king has to move up, and now another amazing move, bishop g7. Now black cannot avoid mate. The threat is pawn h4 check and bishop f3 checkmate. Black has difficulty stopping that threat. If black tries to stop the mate, playing rook takes d3, white continues, pawn takes rook, knight f5. Now it comes h4 check, knight takes on h4, g takes on h4, king h5, and bishop f3 checkmate. This game shows how dangerous it can be when your opponent can force out your king to expose it to attacks and threats. I hope these games made sense regarding how developing your army with threats can give you a development advantage, and then how you can exploit that advantage. These situations can also happen in games between today's elite players. Watch an 11-minute video by National Master Jerry where he goes over a blitz game played between Denis Lazavik and Dawid Janaszak in the chess.com titled Tuesday Blitz of March 24th, 2026. Jerry explains games in a very clear, easy to understand way and has several videos featuring games between elite players where the lead in development was a major deciding factor in the game. The link to his YouTube channel is in the description of this lab. Let us now move on to the what do you notice in this position. What do you notice in this position? It is white to move and wins. Did you notice black's king has no legal moves? All the squares around the black king are controlled by the king or the white queen. Did you notice that black's king is just a check away from mate? Did you notice that if white could play queen b7, queen c6, queen d5, or queen e8, or queen b8, it would be checkmate? Did you notice white has significant material advantage? Did you notice if black could trade its rook for only the white queen, then the game would be a draw by stalemate? The black king has no legal moves. Did you notice white has a passed pawn on a5? Did you notice white's king is under attack at the moment? So white must get out of check and find a way to win by doing so. Did you notice to get out of check, white can only do so by blocking the line of fire of the attacking piece? Did you notice white can block the check 4 different ways? Queen b6, queen c6, bishop d6, or bishop f6. Did you notice that if white blocks the check with its queen, it leads to a draw? So, what is the best way to play for white to block the check and still win the game? It should now be clear that white must first block the check with the bishop. White, however, should be careful which way it blocks, bishop d6 or bishop f6. If white thinks that it does not matter which way it blocks the check with the bishop, then it will be surprised, because after bishop f6, rook takes bishop, check, blocks the check with the queen, and now black has this amazing resource, rook d6. White is forced to take the rook, or if it moves the king, black can draw this game. If white takes the rook, stalemate. The black king has no legal moves. If it moves the king to avoid stalemate, still black can capture the queen, take with the pawn, and now the black king gains the opposition on this pawn endgame. And there is no way for white to win this game. So after rook f6 check, blocks, rook d6, great move. King moves, rook takes. If it takes with the king, still black gains the king opposition, and the rook pawn cannot promote to queen. This game is a draw. So white has to be careful which way it blocks the check with the bishop. The winning move is bishop d6. This way, after black takes on d6 check, white blocks the check with the queen, and now the black rook has to leave or go away from the d6 square, allowing white to mate or capturing the rook without stalemate. If the rook stays on any of one of these squares, the queen can take the rook and there is no stalemate. Or if the rook goes away from this 6th rank, then white can deliver checkmate on b7. How does black continue? Rook takes queen, check, and now it is white that gains the king opposition in this pawn endgame. Black's only move, king b8, pawn b7, and now the black king is forced to move away from the promotion square, giving white control of the promotion square, and this game is winning for white. It promotes to queen and eventually will deliver checkmate. Two quick notes after black captures on d6 with check. White blocks the check. In this position, if black attempts to defend the checkmate on b7 by moving the rook to d7, then white plays queen c6, check, king b8, queen takes rook, mate, next move. And after capturing on b6 check, white must recapture with the pawn, because if it captures with the king, then black gains the king opposition and the rook pawn will not promote. So this would be a draw. I hope you liked this study. Before closing out, I want to answer a question real quick. At what point or moment do we evaluate a position? Or how do we know when it is time to evaluate a position? Good question. There is no hard rule that tells us when we must evaluate a position. When we play a game, we somehow keep track of the changes occurring in the game. Most commonly, change in material. And changes happen with every move made in the game. There are, however, some typical situations that call for an evaluation of the position, or situations when it's necessary to evaluate the position. For instance, after losing or gaining material, or after a tactical sequence has ended, or after the end of a combination if such combination does not end in checkmate, or after pieces and or pawns have been exchanged, or after a change in the overall pawn structure is significant because it alters the character or nature of the position. To summarize, what will happen in your own games is that if you follow the golden rules of the opening, develop your army with threats, while your opponent neglects these, you will get a lead in development, which will allow you to develop an attack against the enemy king. Since the position changes with every move in the game, so does the evaluation of the position. We should be or want to be attentive to significant changes and reevaluate the position accordingly. With that, I want to thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like, share it with chess friends and family, and subscribe to the channel. If you are in the US, visit my Herbalife distributor website to order your favorite Formula 1 nutritional shake mix or herbal tea for a healthier lifestyle. Good luck on your next games and never stop learning. Take care.